Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive? Let's talk design, specifically a classic. We're diving into the Spanish edition of Steve Krug's Don't Make Me Think.
No me hagas pensar.
Exactly. We're talking excerpts,
Well,
images, even the table of contents, you name it.
it's amazing how, even though the book was written way back in 2005,
Yeah.
it's still so relevant today in
Yeah.
2024.
Seriously, the web has completely transformed since 2005.
Totally. But Krug's insights about human behavior, how we use websites, it's like he discovered this timeless truth.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way we scan pages, look for info, get impatient when something's confusing,
Yes.
that hasn't really changed that much.
It's like he knew we were all going to be impatient digital natives. That don't make me think idea. It's so simple, but it's brilliant.
Absolutely. Good design is about removing obstacles, not creating them.
Right.
People want to find what they need, and they want to do it fast.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that slows them down, makes them think harder than they need to, creates friction.
And with so much information out there, especially in 2024,
Oh, yeah,
that friction can make or break a website.
totally. People have so many choices, so much content coming at them.
Right.
If a website isn't immediately engaging, if it's not easy to use, people will just move on.
And speaking of engaging, can we talk about Krig's writing style for a second?
Yeah,
It's so conversational.
it really is.
Like he's just chatting with you, not lecturing.
Totally. And he pulls the reader right in using you, I, we.
Yes.
It's disarming, even when the topic gets complex.
Yes. And even those chapter titles like Land Me Primero, Read Me First.
I love that.
It's playful, it's direct, like you're in on the joke.
Exactly. And that makes design accessible to anyone, even if you're not a tech expert.
For sure. It's for anyone who uses the web, so everyone, really. One thing that really hit me was the contrast he shows between the thinking and not thinking websites, on pages 12 and 13.
Yeah, those visuals are powerful
You instantly see the difference.
right away.
The thinking website, it's like visually exhausting.
It's overwhelming.
Like walking into a room and it's just stuff everywhere. You don't even know where to look.
Exactly. Cluttered. You feel your brain getting tired just looking at it.
Yes. And then the not thinking website, it's like this breath of fresh air.
Clean, inviting, easy to navigate.
Yes. It just makes you feel calmer, more in control.
And that sense of control is crucial for a good user experience.
It's like, that feeling when you finally get your closet organized and everything just makes sense?
Oh, yeah.
That's what good web design should feel like.
Absolutely. It should bring order to the chaos of the internet.
And that leads us to satisficing, which is such a fascinating concept. So what is satisficing exactly, and how does it apply to how people actually use websites?
So satisficing is basically this idea that we don't always make perfectly optimal decisions,
Right.
especially online. We often just choose the first good enough option we find instead of endlessly searching for the absolute best thing.
Like when you're scrolling through Netflix and you just pick anything to watch.
Exactly. You're not necessarily looking for the greatest movie ever made, just something that'll satisfy your craving for, like a rom-com or whatever.
Exactly.
You're satisficing. And Krug argues that good websites understand this about us.
So instead of bombarding users with a million choices, a good website makes it easy to find something good enough quickly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about the difference between searching for a needle in a haystack
Ugh, the worst.
and having that needle presented to you on a silver platter.
Now that's service. That's what I'm talking about. And this actually ties into something we wanted to talk about, which is the power of design conventions. Why are they so important for usability, and why do you think some designers resist them?
Okay, so design conventions, they're like those familiar elements we see on most websites,
Right.
where the logo is, how the navigation menu works, even the little icons we see everywhere.
Like the little magnifying glass for search or the shopping cart.
Exactly. They're like the grammar rules of web design.
They make websites predictable, which I think is comforting,
For sure. When a website follows those conventions, we instantly know how to use it. It's intuitive.
It's like driving on a familiar road. You don't have to think about every little thing. You just go.
Exactly. We can relax and focus on the content, not on trying to figure out how the website works.
So conventions make things easier for everyone, which seems like a good thing. Why the resistance from some designers?
I think some see conventions as limiting creativity,
Ah, okay.
but I actually think they provide a framework for innovation.
Interesting.
Like you can be creative within the structure. It's about striking that balance between familiarity and, doing something new.
It's like, think of music.
Yeah.
You have different genres, but they all have their own conventions. Like a pop song usually has verses and a chorus, but within that structure, there's so much room for creativity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Conventions give you a starting point, a shared language,
Hmm.
but they don't dictate the entire story.
They don't stifle creativity. They just provide, like, guidelines.
Exactly. They're guidelines, not handcuffs. And when used effectively, they can actually enhance creativity.
Because you're not reinventing the wheel every time.
Right. You can focus on the details, the nuances that make your design unique.
I like that. And this actually relates to Krug's analogy of website navigation as wayfinding, which I think is brilliant.
Is such a good analogy.
So break it down for us.
Okay, so imagine you're at the mall.
Okay.
You need to find a specific store, right?
Yeah.
You need clear signs, a map, maybe even those You Are Here directories.
Oh, yeah, those are essential.
A well-designed website is like that.
Okay.
It uses visual cues, clear labels, a logical structure to help you find your way around, just like a well-designed mall.
So just like you don't want to get lost in a confusing mall.
Right.
You don't want to get lost on a website either.
It's all about providing clear pathways for users so they can find what they need quickly and easily.
Makes sense. So we've got satisficing, design conventions, wayfinding, all super important for a good website.
For sure.
But let's talk about that common pitfall we mentioned earlier, the homepage's billboard trap. Why do companies do this, and what's the problem with it?
I think it's tempting for companies to want to showcase everything they do on their homepage.
Oh, yeah. It's like, look at all this cool stuff we do, and this, and this.
Exactly. It's like information overload. But just like you wouldn't put all your furniture in your front doorway.
Sure.
You don't want to cram everything onto your homepage either. It's overwhelming for visitors.
So instead of trying to say everything at once,
Right.
the homepage should be more like a clear and concise introduction.
Exactly. It should pique your interest and make you want to explore further, not bombard you with information.
It's about creating that sense of, ooh, what's in here? I want to find out more.
Exactly. It's about drawing people in, not scaring them away with a wall of text and images.
Less is more.
Absolutely. It's about making conscious design choices that prioritize the user's experience. You know, that whole don't make me think philosophy.
Right. Don't make me think. Speaking of which, do you think Krug's ideas apply beyond just websites?
Oh, absolutely. I think don't make me think can be applied to so many things in life. It's really about making things easier and more enjoyable to use.
Okay, so give me an example.
Like imagine those instruction manuals you get when you buy furniture.
Oh, don't even get me started on those.
They can be so confusing.
The worst.
But what if they were designed with don't make me think in mind? Clear visuals, step-by-step instructions, maybe even a QR code to a helpful video.
Okay, now that would be amazing. Why don't they do that?
Right. It would make assembling furniture so much easier and less frustrating.
And that's just one example. Think about product design, signage, even just writing a clear and concise email.
Exactly. Whenever you're trying to communicate information or guide someone through a process, ask yourself, am I making them think too hard?
It's all about empathy, putting yourself in the other person's shoes.
Exactly. And anticipating their needs.
So if our listeners could take away just one thing from our deep dive into Nomi Hagas Pensar, what would it be?
I think the biggest takeaway is the power of simplicity and clarity. In a world that's so complex and overwhelming, being able to communicate clearly and design intuitive experiences is so valuable.
It's about making life easier, less frustrating,
Absolutely.
and ultimately more enjoyable.
Exactly.
So the next time you're creating something, whether it's a website, a presentation, or even just a set of instructions for your kids.
Or your partner.
Oh, especially for partners. Remember, don't make me think.
Thanks for diving in with us, everyone. It's like, instead of putting all your cool stuff out on the front lawn, you put it inside and you let people discover it.
Exactly. Let them explore. The homepage is just the entrance, you know?
Like a door. Yeah, you don't put everything you own in the doorway. You invite people in.
Makes sense. And speaking of exploring, we talked about this idea of satisficing earlier.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. Can we dig into that a bit more? Like, what does it really mean for web design?
Sure. So with satisficing, the idea is that people aren't always looking for the absolute best option online.
Right. They just want something that works.
Exactly. They want something good enough that gets the job done. They don't want to spend hours comparing a million options.
It's like you're hungry. You want to find a restaurant.
Yeah.
You don't have time to read every single review on Yelp.
No way.
You just want to find a place that sounds good and has decent food.
Exactly. You're not looking for a Michelin star experience every time, just something satisfying.
Right. And websites need to be designed with that in mind.
Absolutely. People are scanning for info, looking for the quickest path to what they need.
Whether it's buying something, finding information, whatever.
Exactly. A good website understands that and makes it easy to find that good enough solution fast.
So don't overwhelm users, don't make them jump through hoops, make it simple.
Keep it simple. Design for those real-life scenarios. You know, people are busy,
Oh, I know it.
they're multitasking, they don't have time for a website that's fighting them every step of the way.
Time is precious.
Exactly. And when a website respects your time, you're more likely to, actually use it.
Become a loyal customer, maybe.
Exactly.
It all comes back to that user experience.
User experience is key.
Okay, so we've talked about satisficing.
Yeah.
We talked about these design conventions, this idea of wayfinding on a website, are all super important for usability. But you mentioned some designers kind of push back on these design conventions. Why is that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think some designers feel like conventions stifle their creativity.
Like they're putting them in a box.
Exactly. Like they can't be original.
But don't you think it actually frees you up to be more creative?
I think so. It's like you have these established elements,
The basics.
right? So you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
Right.
And that gives you more mental space to be creative with other aspects of the design.
It's like imagine you're writing a novel, right?
Okay, yeah,
There are conventions in storytelling, like having a plot, characters, a setting,
of course.
but within that framework, you can be so creative.
Absolutely. The conventions don't limit the story you tell.
They just provide like a structure, and that can be really freeing for a writer.
I totally agree. And it's the same with web design. You can work within these conventions and still create something unique and engaging.
It's about finding that balance, right?
Exactly. Familiarity and innovation.
They can coexist.
They can. It's not an either-or situation. Good design is about using those conventions thoughtfully.
So the conventions aren't the enemy of creativity. It's more about, like you said, how you use them.
Right. It's about understanding why they exist in the first place.
And then using that knowledge to make smart design choices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, it's about the user.
Always. We're designing for them, not for ourselves. And that actually brings us back to Krug's analogy of wayfinding, which
Yeah.
I think illustrates this point beautifully.
It's such a powerful analogy.
So for our listeners who maybe haven't read the book, can you walk us through it one more time?
Of course. So Krug compares navigating a website to finding your way around a physical space, like a shopping mall.
Right?
You need clear signs, those "You're Here" maps, a logical layout so you don't get lost.
I'd be lost without those maps.
Right, and a well-designed website does the same thing.
It helps you find your way.
Exactly. It uses visual cues, clear labels, a hierarchy of information to guide you to where you need to go.
It's all about orientation and clarity.
Yes, just like in the real world.
And if a website's navigation is confusing,
Oh, it's the worst.
it's incredibly frustrating for users.
Totally. It's like trying to find your way out of a maze.
Exactly. Nobody wants to feel lost and confused on a website.
It defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
You want people to find what they're looking for, right?
Yeah. Right, so they'll come back for more. Now, we can't talk about good web design without revisiting that common pitfall.
The homepage's billboard trap.
Yes. Why do you think so many companies fall into this trap?
I think it's easy to get caught up in wanting to show everything you do.
Showcase it all?
Right. Highlight every product, every service, every accomplishment.
It is just too much.
It's overwhelming. It's like if you walked into someone's house and every single surface was covered with photos and knickknacks.
Yeah, I'd be exhausted.
Right.
Right.
You wouldn't even know where to look first. And that's what it feels like when a homepage tries to do too much.
So instead of bombarding visitors with information,
Right. It's about being selective.
curating the experience.
Exactly. The homepage should be like an appetizer.
Okay, I like that.
It should give you a taste of what's to come and entice you to explore further.
Instead of hitting you over the head with the entire menu all at once.
Exactly. It's about making those strategic design choices that prioritize the user's experience, just like we've been talking about.
Less is more.
Absolutely. Sometimes the most impactful designs are the ones that embrace simplicity.
And that brings us back to our friend Steve Krug.
Don't make me think.
Don't make me think. I think that's a good philosophy for life in general. It's about understanding that good design isn't just about aesthetics.
It's about solving problems for people.
Exactly. And making their lives a little bit easier. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Nomihagas Pensar.
Which, by the way, is such a catchy title.
I know, right? It's so much better than Don't Make Me Think.
Way better.
What's the key takeaway for our listeners? What's that one thing they can take from this book and apply to their own lives?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think at its core, Don't Make Me Think is about empathy.
Okay.
It's about putting yourself in the user's shoes, whether you're designing a website or, writing an email.
Or assembling furniture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about asking yourself, how can I make this easier for them?
Anticipate their needs.
Yes, and design with those needs in mind.
Because good design shouldn't be a mystery. It should be a delight.
Well said. It should make you want to use whatever it is, not throw it out the window in frustration.
Exactly. So next time you're creating something, whether it's a website, a presentation, even just a grocery
Or
list,
giving someone directions.
oh, especially giving directions, channel your inner Steve Krug.
Don't make me think.
Don't make me think. Such a powerful concept. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into Nomi Hagas Pensar.
It's been fun.
Always a pleasure chatting design with you. Until next time, everyone, keep it user-friendly.